And thank you, Secretary Carter and General Dempsey, for being here today. And General Dempsey, I especially want to thank you for your decades of service to your country and to the cause of freedom. We wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors, and I'm not sure whether this will be the last time we're privileged to speak with you in a hearing, but regardless, please know how much we appreciate all you've done for our country. And I want to thank the men and women who are deployed in Iraq and in so many other places in the Middle East for their service to our country. Although they've not been labeled combat troops, they're still operating under dangerous and uncertain circumstances and are far removed from their families and from the people they love. I want to follow up on the discussion between Senator McCain and Secretary Carter on how we might support Syrian rebels once they return from training. Mr. Secretary, you stated that you believe we have an obligation to those we train to provide them with protection, and I agree with that. And I also believe we have an obligation to let the American people know, and that you have an obligation to let Congress know and help us to fully understand what this strategy entails, what that means, and the funding, the time, and the effort that providing any such protection might entail, and what it will necessitate. So can you tell us, when will the Department of Defense fully explain to the American people and to Congress what this strategy will involve, what it's going to cost our government? I've said this before, but this is something that that should have been made clear last year when the president came up with this plan. But regardless, it's better late than never. It's good that we do it now rather than not at all. Can you tell us when that might occur?
I'll continuously tell you what's going on over there with respect to what we're doing in Iraq and what we're doing with respect to Syria, and we're going to have to, as I said, I think we have an obligation to support those fighters when they go in there. We're going to have to decide exactly under what conditions and what way we'll make that tactical decision when we introduce them. But I think the main thing is that we increase that number from what is now a very small number, and I'm not surprised that it's running on television, into a much larger number. I think we can do that, and the officer who runs this program believes that he will be able to do that, and we'll keep you apprised of our progress, and I'll tell you every day what I know, as I've done here today.
Thank you. I appreciate that and look forward to that. Now, U.S. strategy in Syria is to empower the quote-unquote moderate opposition to defeat ISIS and to put enough pressure on the Assad regime to achieve some type of negotiated peace settlement. For the sake of discussion, let's say that these moderates are successful in degrading ISIS to the point that they're no longer a factor in Syria. What does pressuring Assad or his supporters into a negotiated settlement look like at that point, especially given the military support from Iran and Hezbollah that they currently enjoy? Specifically, what role will the United States play in bringing about the pressure and support to achieve this kind of settlement?
I think the way it would look, the outcome that we are aiming for, is one in which Bashar al-Assad and those who have been associated with his atrocities in Syria are removed, but the structures of government in Damascus and in Iraq that remain continue on, are in an inclusively governed way that is multi-sectarian to include Alawites and others, and that can then turn to the task of regaining its sovereign territory from ISIL to the east in a project that would look like what we are working with Baghdad to accomplish to its west in Iraq. That is the post-Assad transition that would be the best for the Syrian people and the best for our counter-ISIL strategy.
By the way, do you believe the 2001 authorization for the use of military force gives authority necessary to engage the Assad regime forces that may come into conflict with any rebels we may train?
I'm going to be very careful about how I answer a legal question in that regard, and I'd prefer to get back to you in that regard.
Okay. Now, Mr. Secretary, what level of command and control, in your opinion, does ISIS leadership have over these various affiliate groups across the Middle East and Northern Africa, as well as lone wolf individuals or groups in Europe and the Western Hemisphere?
It's mixed, but in the main, not entirely, but in the main, what one sees is a mixture of groups that were already radicalized and already intent upon attacking the West or attacking Western interests or destabilizing places in the Middle East, rebranding themselves as ISIL because of this seeming success it had. And then to get to the lone wolf part, you see people who have had no training, no association with it, including Americans, who go on the internet and find themselves enthralled because whatever lost souls they are, enthralled by the violence or whatever associated with ISIL, and self-radicalize and unfortunately undertake to do violence. So you see that spectrum there. You do see some effort by ISIL, meaning ISIL in Syria and Iraq, to command and control, but it's not exclusively that way. And I say all this because that's very distinctly different from the al-Qaeda model. The al-Qaeda model was a very hierarchical, very clear command and control type terrorist enemy. And that meant they had discipline, and it meant they could take on big things like 9/11. But it also meant that when we started to go after them, they were vulnerable to attacks on the command and control structure and on their logistics structure. ISIL is more resilient because it is more decentralized and informal in that sense. It takes a different kind of campaign. We're highly aware of that, as is law enforcement, by the way.
Thank you. I see my time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.